Chapter 1. The end of the world, apparently. Conquering a capital should not be this difficult. I had the plan laid out with the precision of divine mathematics. The siege engines aligned, the propaganda posters pre-printed, new management, same taxes, better aesthetics. And the dramatic cloak prepared for my balcony declaration. Everything was perfect, until Cyrus Morin decided to help. The man has never seen a boundary he didn't explode. At precisely the moment my army breached the outer wall, a suspicious glow appeared in the distance, pulsed the way only terrible ideas do. "Oh no, he's building again," I muttered. Seconds later, the sky turned green. That's never a good sign. My adjutant, a trembling intern named Var, said, "My lord, it appears to be a sun?" "Not ours, I assume," I said. "Unclear, my lord." "Fine. Prepare my irritation." I marched up the hill overlooking the city just in time to see Cyrus standing on a pile of smoldering bricks, grinning like a lunatic, hair full of static and triumph. Behind him, a contraption of metal rings and teapots hummed like it regretted existing. He saw me and waved cheerfully. "Kale, perfect timing. You're about to witness history, or possibly vaporization. Excellent. I'd hoped to start the day with mild annihilation," I said. He tapped a dial on his so-called doom engine. "This will end all tyranny forever. By replacing it with what? Art." The man genuinely believed that counted as governance. I was halfway through an elegant retort when his machine shrieked, coughed sparks, and began drawing in the surrounding light. The air warped. My soldiers screamed. The capital's cathedral bells melted mid-ring. Typical Tuesday. "Cyrus, what exactly did you build?" I asked. "A harmonic destabilizer. It transmutes oppressive structures into pure potential energy." "By that, you mean it explodes things?" "Yes, but conceptually." Before I could order him to stop, the machine released a pulse so bright it erased shadows. The world went silent, then screamed. I remember being lifted off my feet, flung through smoke, and landing in what used to be the Royal Plaza. The palace was gone. So was most of my army. And yet, oddly enough, so was the enormous skeletal horror that had been sleeping under the city for centuries. The one we hadn't told anyone about. I groaned, pushing debris off my cape. Cyrus stumbled over, singed and grinning. "Kale, you're alive. Isn't that wonderful?" "It's inconvenient. Now I have to deal with the consequences," I said. Behind us, the sky cleared. The dark god's shadow, something ancient and hideous, was gone, vaporized by Cyrus's idiocy. The capital, mostly intact, erupted into cheers. "Oh look, they think we saved them," I said. "Technically, we did," Cyrus said, brushing ash from his sleeve. "I was conquering them, Cyrus." He beamed. "Intentions are overrated." A crowd approached, waving banners that still said "Down with Evil," which felt personally rude. They were chanting something. I caught the words heroes and saviors. I considered spontaneous combustion. The High Bishop appeared, weeping with gratitude. "Lord Kale, you and the inventor have banished the darkness. The gods themselves must favor you." I blinked at him. "We banished it?" "Yes, your divine light." "That wasn't divine light, that was amateur thermodynamics," I said. Cyrus elbowed me. "Smile for the people." "I will not." "Too late. They're painting us." And indeed, an artist had already begun sketching us in heroic poses. My cape fluttering, Cyrus holding his smoking wrench like a holy relic. "This is unbearable. I can't even destroy civilization without being congratulated," I muttered. Cyrus laughed. "You're welcome." I turned to him. "You ruined my conquest, annihilated my army, and accidentally redeemed my reputation. Do you have any idea what that means?" He thought for a moment. "Tea." I stared at him. "Tea. Celebratory tea for saving the world," he said. I sighed. The crowd's cheers rose around us, echoing through the ruined square. My perfect plan was in ashes. My rival was glowing with pride, and I was apparently the kingdom's new hope. I tugged my cape from the rubble and dusted it off. "Fine. But I'm poisoning the tea. Cyrus grinned wider. I'd expect nothing less. The applause grew deafening. Somewhere behind the noise, the gods were probably laughing. Chapter 2. The audacity of being applauded. There are few things more humiliating than being thanked. I'd prepared for interrogation, possibly execution, something dignified. Instead, I was paraded into the royal court like a prized pet. My boots left ash on the carpet. The guards looked at me with awe instead of terror, which was new and deeply unsettling. Cyrus walked beside me, humming. He was wearing goggles as a headband, as if that counted as formal wear. His coat was burned at the edges. He looked like a disaster and radiated confidence. "You should smile, hero, smile," he whispered. "I am not a hero," I said. "You saved the world. By accident." He winked. "Intentions are overrated." We reached the dais. The king himself stood waiting, all gold embroidery and sanctimonious teeth. Around him, courtiers clapped politely, pretending not to fear me. Lyra the bard was already sketching us in her notebook, eyes sparkling like she'd discovered a new religion. Lord Cale Vareth and Master Cyrus Morin, saviors of the realm, the king boomed. I nearly choked. "I beg your pardon? You struck down the darkness. You restored hope to our kingdom." I glanced at Cyrus. He bowed so low his goggles nearly fell off. "All in a day's work, your majesty." I said nothing. Silence is my favorite form of protest. The king gestured grandly. "We owe you eternal gratitude." Eternal. How exhausting. I considered several responses. "Please don't. It was a misfire. I was trying to kill you." But decided on none. One must choose their disasters. Lyra piped up from the crowd, cool poised. "Your Majesty, may I record their noble partnership for posterity?" Cyrus beamed. "Oh yes, posterity loves us." "Partnership? That implies consent." Lyra ignored me, already scribbling. "A song of unexpected unity, of chaos and control entwined." I sighed. "You're going to rhyme our names, aren't you?" "Obviously," she said. I imagined setting her notebook on fire. Unfortunately, that would only make her write a second ballad titled The Tragic Attempted Arson of Inspiration. The king clapped again. "A banquet shall be held tonight in your honor." "Must it?" I asked. Cyrus elbowed me. "Yes, it must." I leaned toward him. "I will find a way to blame you for this." "Gladly," he said. The banquet hall reeked of civility. I sat at the high table beside Cyrus, who had already spilled wine on the royal tablecloth. Courtiers kept approaching to toast our heroism. Every time I tried to explain that our so-called heroism was an elaborate mistake, someone refilled my glass. Lyra performed her first draft of The Duel That Saved the World. It had far too many verses and an offensive amount of emotional sincerity. Cyrus clapped along. I plotted his murder in 12 creative ways. Poison, chandelier, crossbow disguised as centerpiece, etc. "You're glaring," he said without looking at me. "I'm thinking. Same thing for you. Do you ever shut up?" "Rarely," he said, then smiled in that infuriating way, as if my irritation was his favorite form of applause. A servant passed by with a tray of desserts. I reached for one at the same moment Cyrus did. Our hands brushed. It was nothing. A simple collision of fingers. Static. Electricity. The end of my composure. I pulled back instantly. "Don't touch me." He blinked, amused. "You're blushing." "I am plotting." Plotting sounds suspiciously like blushing. "Touch me again and you'll test that theory." He grinned wider. "Promise." The nerve. Lyra, of course, noticed everything. Her quill scratched furiously. The tension between them electric. The spark of destiny. I turned to her. "Erase that." She did not. By the end of the banquet, I had been toasted, praised, and hugged by at least 3 noblewomen who smelled of sincerity and despair. Cyrus performed a small demonstration of his technology for peace, which set off fireworks indoors. The crowd applauded. I stared into my wine and wondered if there was enough arsenic in the kingdom to handle this many compliments. The king approached again, drunk on gratitude. Tomorrow, we shall announce your rehabilitation to the people. The world must know that even villains can change, he declared. Rehabilitation? I asked, horrified. Cyrus looked delighted. Oh, I like that word. It sounds so official. I prefer temporary insanity, I muttered. The king laughed, clapping us both on the shoulders. You two are the future of peace. Cyrus raised his glass. To peace. I raised mine. To the swift death of irony. Later, when the hall emptied, I found Cyrus standing at the balcony, gazing over the torchlit city. His hair caught the wind, still singed from our previous apocalypse. He didn't turn when he said, "You know, they really love us." I find that alarming. He smiled without looking back. You can't stop it, Kale. The people see what they want to see. They'll see a monster soon enough. Maybe they'll see someone who accidentally did something good and didn't die of shame about it, he said. I didn't respond. The silence stretched between us, full of everything unsaid and everything denied. Then, without looking, he reached out, a thoughtless gesture, and his fingers brushed mine again on the railing. I froze. He didn't pull away. Still plotting? He asked softly. Always. He laughed under his breath, that reckless, infuriating sound that made the world feel both heavier and lighter. Below us, the city cheered. I realized, with deep disgust, that the cheers were for us. Tomorrow, I'm destroying the PR council, I said. Cyrus grinned. See? That's the spirit of a hero. I contemplated throwing him off the balcony. Instead, I stood there beside him, pretending I wasn't secretly waiting for him to touch my hand again. For the record, I despised every moment of it. Probably. Chapter 3: Hero Training for the Criminally Evil. Rehabilitation. A word that implies I was ever habilitated in the first place. The king, in his infinite foolishness, announced a rehabilitation tour across the kingdom. Apparently, our accidental salvation of civilization wasn't enough. Now we had to prove we were good on purpose. Cyrus was thrilled. Naturally. This is brilliant. A public relations campaign. We'll inspire the masses, he said, striding into my study as if it were his own. I don't inspire, I rule, intimidate, and occasionally devastate economies. Public relations is beneath me, I said without looking up. So is humility, he said, plopping into the chair opposite mine. I've yet to see evidence that humility is useful. He leaned forward, grinning. Then this will be a learning experience. I sighed. For you, perhaps. I'm already an expert in loathing. The next morning, a carriage arrived emblazoned with the royal crest and the phrase, "Rebuilding hearts and homes," in gold lettering. I stared at it for a long, painful minute. This feels like mockery, I said. Cyrus was already loading crates of helpful inventions into the back. Mostly metal tubes, a suspicious number of gears, and something that hummed. It's called branding, smile for the public, he said. I'd rather declare war. Same effect, fewer flowers. Our first stop was a small village recently damaged by a flood. The people gathered in the square, eyes wide, clearly expecting us to either save them or vaporize them. Fair. A royal messenger handed me a speech titled, "Words of Hope from Our Reformed Protectors." I skimmed it. It began with "Beloved citizens," which was already too optimistic. I read it aloud anyway, my voice echoing over the crowd. Beloved citizens, it has come to our attention that you require assistance, compassion, and community spirit. Cyrus elbowed me. You're supposed to sound like you mean it. I am. This is my compassionate tone. The villagers applauded politely, assuming my sarcasm was noble stoicism. I despise mass delusion. Then came the heroic act portion of the day. We were to help rebuild the damaged bridge. Cyrus immediately unveiled one of his machines. It's a structural stabilizer. Perfectly safe, he declared. It exploded 30 seconds later. The blast, however, blew debris into precisely the right positions. The bridge was miraculously repaired. The villagers cheered. Cyrus bowed. See? Effective. I stared at the smoldering wreck. Your incompetence is indistinguishable from divine intervention. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. The local children handed us flower crowns. I considered setting mine on fire, but that seemed too obvious. By the third village, I'd given 5 speeches, rescued 2 kittens, 1 bit me, and personally terrified a band of thieves into surrendering. The bards were already composing something called The Gentle Tyrant and the Mad Miracle Worker. I'm still not speaking to them. At one point, a journalist asked, Lord Kale, how does it feel to be a symbol of hope? Deeply disturbing. Hope is a fragile and often misplaced emotion. I replied. They quoted me as, Lord Kale speaks on the importance of fragile hope. Cyrus nearly choked laughing. You're trending ## fragile hope, he said. I will burn the printing press. Heroic passion. The people love you, he teased. I'd prefer their fear. He smiled, leaning close. You say that, but you look very pretty when you're pretending to care. I blinked. Did you just call me pretty? He shrugged. Observational science. I turned away, mostly to hide the color in my face. You need new subjects. The final task of the day was giving a speech on kindness at a village fair. Cyrus insisted we stand on the same stage. He began enthusiastically. Kindness is the force that unites all invention, all progress, all tea-making. Yes, kindness is splendid, especially when properly weaponized. I interrupted. The crowd laughed. I wasn't joking. Kindness is a strategic investment. The illusion of mercy gains loyalty faster than fear ever could. Consider using it wisely. I continued. Applause. Actual applause. Cyrus grinned beside me. You do realize they think that was inspirational? I was advocating manipulation. They heard motivation. I exhaled slowly. This is a nightmare. That night, we camped outside the next town. The stars looked disgustingly sincere. Cyrus tinkered by the fire, humming some victorious tune. He glanced at me. You know, for someone who claims to hate this, you're very good at it. At what? Accidentally helping people. I'm efficient, collateral kindness, I said. He chuckled, eyes gleaming in the firelight. You're impossible. I've been told. He reached into the firelight to adjust the kettle, and for a moment, his fingers brushed mine again. Heat against heat, careless, infuriating. Neither of us moved. He smirked. Still plotting. Always, I said softly. He laughed, the sound curling around the crackle of flame. Good. I'd hate for you to go soft. I assure you, I'm every bit as terrible as I've always been. I murmured. The problem, of course, was that I wasn't entirely sure that was true anymore. Chapter 4, Saving People by Accident. The King's Council called it hero practice. I called it humiliation with better lighting. Our orders were simple. Demonstrate moral improvement in a public setting. Cyrus clapped his hands like a child. Finally, a chance to showcase my social skills. You don't have social skills, I said. He winked. Then I'll improvise. Our first assignment was patrolling the marketplace of Brightmarsh, a city famous for optimism and overpriced pastries. The streets were crowded. The air smelled like sugar and hypocrisy, and I could already feel my patience eroding. Remember, we're supposed to smile. Cyrus whispered. I am smiling, I said. Your face looks like it's plotting genocide. Accuracy is important. We strolled down the main avenue in our ridiculous new uniforms, white cloaks with gold trim, the color of surrender. I was considering arson as a protest when I noticed a commotion ahead. A group of masked men were attempting to rob a jeweler's stall. The crowd gasped, waiting for a heroic intervention. Cyrus nudged me. Go on. Say something inspiring. I prefer results. I strode forward, cape sweeping dramatically. Some habits die hard. The thieves froze when they saw me. I didn't draw my sword. I didn't need to. I simply stared at them very quietly, very patiently, with the expression I usually reserve for traitors. The leader dropped his knife. We surrender. Another fell to his knees. The rest fled. The crowd erupted in cheers. Someone shouted, "He didn't even lift a finger." "Correct," I muttered. "That was the point." Cyrus joined me, grinning. "See? Heroic restraint. I was menacing them. Menacingly good." The local constable ran up, shaking my hand. "Thank you, my lord. Your mere presence restored justice." "Wonderful. Let's never speak of it again," I said. Naturally, we were photographed. Our next assignment was civic restoration. Cyrus insisted he had an invention for cleaning up an old warehouse district in seconds. "Explain," I said. "Combustion," he said proudly. "Of course." He assembled his contraption in the middle of the street, all pipes and humming glass orbs. A small crowd gathered. "Prepare," Cyrus declared, "to witness the future of sustainable purification." He pulled the lever. The entire warehouse caught fire. The crowd screamed. I face-bombed. Cyrus blinked. That was slightly more efficient than intended. I sighed. "Do something." "I am," he said, and to my horror, he adjusted the dials. The fire abruptly reversed, the flames imploding inward, leaving behind a perfectly clean, newly reinforced structure. The crowd gasped, then cheered. Someone shouted, "The hero inventor purged the corruption." Cyrus bowed. "Purification complete." I stared at him. "You set a building on fire and got applause." He shrugged. "Presentation matters. I hate this kingdom. They love us, though." Precisely my point. By evening, the streets were swarming with reporters. They followed us from alley to alley, shouting questions. "Lord Kale, how does it feel to save the city twice in one day?" "Lord Kale, is your partnership with Master Morin purely professional?" Cyrus smirked at that one. "Define professional." I glared. "Do not encourage them." We ducked into an alley, pressed against the wall as flashes went off at the entrance. "Smile for the papers. Show the world your heroic bond," someone shouted. Cyrus grinned at me. "You heard them." "No. Come on, act natural." "I am acting natural. I'm hiding." "That's not marketable." Before I could deliver a cutting remark, he grabbed my collar and kissed me. It wasn't planned. It wasn't gentle either, quick, impulsive, theatrical. My brain went blank. Somewhere beyond us, the reporters gasped. When he finally pulled back, I was too stunned to breathe. "What?" I began. He shrugged, perfectly casual. "You said act natural." I stared at him, every word in my mind trying to form a coup. That was the most unprofessional act of manipulation I've ever witnessed. I said slowly, "Thank you." "Not a compliment. You didn't exactly shove me away." I was temporarily paralyzed by disbelief. Cyrus tilted his head, smiling that infuriating smile, the one that made the world seem slightly off balance. "Relax. It's just for the cameras." The reporters were already shouting about the kiss of courage. I exhaled through my teeth. "I will personally dismantle the printing industry." "Too late, we're front-page news," he said. Later, back at the inn, I found him sitting by the window, tinkering with his invention again, humming. "You hum too much," I said. "It helps me think." "Think quieter." He glanced at me, smirk curving just enough to be dangerous. "You're still thinking about it." "I'm thinking about murder." "Same thing in your language." I turned away, pretending to inspect my gloves. My pulse disagreed with me. Outside, the city still chanted our names. The crowd's cheers echoed up through the window, mingling with the night breeze. Cyrus laughed softly. "Admit it. You're getting used to being adored." "I prefer infamy." "Not as much as you pretend." I met his eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, "Next time you pull a stunt like that, I'll poison your tea." He smiled, unbothered. "As long as you pour it for me." I looked away, muttering something unspeakably undignified, because the truth, the absolute horror of it, was that for one terrifying instant, when his hand was on my collar and the world blurred around us, I hadn't hated it. Not even a little. Chapter 5: The Public Ship Name I Hate. There are few things more horrifying than public affection. Except, apparently, public fandom. It began with Lyra. Of course it did. She'd written another ballad, this one titled, The Kiss That Saved the City. It was everywhere within a day. Sung in taverns, played in marketplaces, and sold on sheet music with our names in gold ink. The lyrics were inaccurate. They described me as a brooding savior cloaked in sorrow, and Cyrus as a mad genius tamed by love, which frankly is libel. By sunrise, the kingdom had coined a word, Chirus. I didn't understand it at first. Then a merchant shouted it at us as we passed through the capital gates. Bless the union of Chirus, he cried, waving a miniature flag with our faces on it. I stopped dead. What did he just say? Cyrus squinted. Oh, that's clever. Clever? They've merged our names into an abomination. I hissed. He grinned. It's catchy. It's a crime against language and dignity. He chuckled under his breath. The people ship us, Kale. I don't know what that means, but I hate it. It means they think we're. Don't finish that sentence. By midday, the Chirus hysteria had reached catastrophic proportions. Lyra was performing her song in the royal square before a crowd of thousands. There were banners. There was confetti. There were, God's help us, plush dolls. One of them looked suspiciously like me, cape and all. The eyes sparkled. It was nauseating. Cyrus bought one immediately. Look, it even frowns like you. I stared at the doll, then at him. I will burn that. You say that about everything, he said cheerfully, tucking it into his coat. That afternoon, the Royal PR Council summoned us for an exclusive interview. Apparently, the people were hungry for insight into our partnership. I told them I'd rather be executed. They called that charming reluctance. We were seated on an ornate couch in front of a crowd of journalists. The moderator, a woman with a smile too sharp to be natural, began. Lord Kale, Master Cyrus, the people adore you. How does it feel to be the kingdom's favorite heroes? I answered honestly, like a cosmic joke. Cyrus laughed beside me. He means we're honored. I do not. The interviewer pressed on. Many citizens believe your bond represents unity between intellect and strategy, chaos and order, darkness and light. Incorrect. It represents suffering and caffeine, I said. Cyrus leaned closer, whispering, You're not helping the image. I'm trying to end it. The audience laughed as if we were performing a comedy routine. Lyra was in the front row, scribbling every word, smiling like a proud parent watching her two disasters thrive. Then came the final question. Can you two tell us what your secret is? What makes the legendary partnership of Chirus so special? The interviewer asked sweetly. I froze. Our what? Cyrus turned toward me, eyes gleaming with mischief. I recognized that look. It meant chaos was imminent. Our secret, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's easy. He grabbed my collar and kissed me. Again. The crowd gasped. Flash crystals exploded like fireworks. Lyra squealed. My brain promptly vacated my skull. When he pulled back, he smiled for the cameras, perfectly at ease. That's the secret. Chemistry. I sat there in stunned silence, the world spinning. The interviewer fanned herself. Well, that certainly confirms the rumors. I could hear the crowd chanting it outside already. Chirus! Chirus! Cyrus waved like a celebrity. I contemplated self-immolation. After the interview, I cornered him in the corridor. What in the name of all infernal contracts was that? He grinned. Public relations. You assaulted me. You're welcome. I'm plotting your death. You're blushing. I'm furious. He leaned closer, voice low. You're also flustered. I'm reconsidering murder as performance art. He laughed, utterly unbothered, and walked off humming Lyra's cursed ballad. I stared after him, pulse still unreasonably high, face betraying me with warmth I refused to name. The next morning, the newspapers published our kiss on the front page under the headline, Chirus, Love That Conquered Evil. I crumpled the paper in silence. Cyrus peeked over my shoulder. That's a great picture of us. Of you, maybe. I look like I'm being stabbed. He smirked. That's your romantic face. I threw the paper at him. I hope the dark god resurrects just to end this. Then we'll save the world again, he said, already laughing. I hated how easy it sounded coming from him. I hated the way his eyes sparkled when he looked at me. And most of all, I hated that I couldn't stop smiling when he wasn't looking. That night, Lyra performed the Ballad of Chirus for a crowd of thousands. I stood in the shadows, cloak pulled tight, watching as the audience swayed to lyrics about love reborn in firelight. Beside me, Cyrus nudged my arm. See? They adore us. I'm aware. It's revolting. He grinned. Admit it. Part of you likes it. I do not. Liar. I glanced at him, about to retort, but he was already smiling at me like the whole ridiculous world was something worth saving. I looked away first. You're insufferable. And you're blushing again, he said softly. I ignored him. For exactly 3 pages. Chapter 6, Monsters, Morons, and Misunderstandings. The event was supposed to be harmless. A simple charity day in the plaza. Smiling at peasants, pretending we care, holding a symbolic ribbon for a new bakery or some nonsense. The king's PR council promised no explosions, no chaos, no Cyrus-related disasters. They lied. Try to look pleasant, the royal handler whispered as we stood before a cheering crowd. I adjusted my gloves. I am pleasant. For a man contemplating mass arson. Cyrus, standing beside me in his ridiculous red coat, grinned. You say that like it's a bad thing. It usually is. He waved to the crowd, basking in the attention like a cat in sunlight. You're just jealous. They love me. They love the idea of you, a dangerous delusion cultivated by propaganda. I muttered. He elbowed me. They love you too, Kale. You're the brooding one. It's a thing. I will personally end all things. We were in the middle of some painfully optimistic speech about hope when the sky split open. A shriek tore through the air. High, wet, wrong. The crowd screamed. People scattered. I looked up just in time to see a creature, all teeth and smoke and dripping black wings, claw its way from the clouds. Cyrus blinked. That wasn't in the schedule. Really? I thought it was part of the entertainment. I said. Looks like a manifestation of corrupted ether. I've always wanted to fight one, he said, practically delighted. Of course he was excited. The monster dove. Its claws raked across the plaza, splintering stone. The handlers ran for their lives. Cyrus was already moving, hurling one of his unstable inventions skyward. It detonated in a swirl of violet flame, forcing the beast back. Are you trying to kill it or audition for a fireworks festival? I shouted, drawing my blade. Both, he yelled back. The thing roared. I lunged, slicing through one of its shadowy tendrils. It screamed and reformed. Typical. Cyrus tossed me a glare. We could trap it if someone would stop criticizing and start coordinating. I grit my teeth. Fine. Left flank on my mark. We moved, and God's help me, it worked. He read my steps, matched my timing, spun his gadgets exactly when I needed them. I redirected his explosions with wards, turned his chaos into rhythm. It shouldn't have been possible, but it was like 2 halves of a single, profoundly ill-advised plan. The monster's final shriek echoed as our combined strike tore it apart in a storm of light and ash. The crowd erupted in cheers. Brilliant teamwork, someone yelled. Such chemistry, another cried. I sheathed my blade, scowling. We have got to stop accidentally doing that. Cyrus was grinning like an idiot. You have to admit we looked good. We looked responsible. It's disgusting. Afterward, I tried to slip away through a side alley before anyone could shove metals at us again. Cyrus followed, of course. Hey, you were amazing back there, he called, catching up. I was efficient, you were reckless. I corrected. You loved it. I tolerated it. He stepped in front of me, blocking the exit. Admit it, Kale. You like working with me. I like silence. You're the opposite. Then why are you shaking? I froze. Because your experiments are a health hazard. He smirked. Because you felt it too. I felt irritation. Nothing else. Liar. He stepped closer, too close, until the alley was full of tension and the smell of smoke still clinging to his coat. I refused to move. You're invading my personal space. Maybe you should defend it, Lord Strategist. That did it. I shoved him back, or tried to. He grabbed my wrist, and suddenly we were chest to chest, breath tangled, heart still pounding from the fight. He looked at me, all reckless spark and maddening confidence. Go on, call this another PR stunt, he said softly. I opened my mouth to retort, and somehow, disastrously, our mouths collided instead. The kiss was furious, sharp, electric, an explosion without flame. My mind short-circuited. His hand fisted in my collar. I might have grabbed his coat. Neither of us moved for what felt like forever. When we finally broke apart, I could barely breathe. That wasn't for the fans, he said, voice rough. I straightened my coat, every inch of me pretending composure. Obviously not. It was a tactical maneuver. Cyrus blinked. A what? To disorient you. Pretty sure you're the one disoriented. Silence. He grinned, leaning against the wall. So, tactical kisses. Should I expect more of those? Only if you continue being unbearable. Then I'll make sure of it. I turned on my heel, trying to ignore the heat in my face. Next time, I'm leading the mission alone. Sure, Kale, whatever you say, he said, laughter chasing me down the alley. The next morning, the newspapers called it the Battle of the Silver Plaza. The headlines read, Chirus defends the people once more. Witnesses describe unmatched unity and passion. Unity and passion. I set the paper on fire. Cyrus walked in, holding 2 cups of tea. You're burning your own press again. Therapy, I said. He smirked. Want me to kiss it better? I threw a cushion at him. He caught it easily, laughing all the way out. I sank back in my chair, scowling into the ashes, and, despite everything, smiling just a little. Chapter 7, Public Relations. 0. Sexual Tension. 1. It is remarkable how long a single kiss can ruin a man's life. Days had passed since the incident in the alley, and yet, every time Cyrus entered the room, my brain chose violence against itself. I refused to call it awkward. I am a villain, not a teenager. It was simply strategically inconvenient. We were supposed to resume our heroic outreach program. Another series of speeches and handshakes. I had considered faking illness. Unfortunately, Lyra showed up before I could perfect the cough. Good morning, Lord Kale. Lovely day for romantic tension, she said far too cheerfully. I nearly dropped my tea. For what? She grinned. Oh, I can feel it. The air's practically humming. Forbidden affection. Yearning. Denial. This is art. I assure you, nothing forbidden or affectionate is occurring. Cyrus entered right on cue, coat unbuttoned, hair a disaster, grin infuriating. Morning, everyone. Did I miss the part where Kale pretends he doesn't think about me? I don't think about you, I said instantly. Sure, he replied, taking my seat. Lyra was scribbling furiously in her notebook. I'm calling the next ballad, Love in the Shadows. The Chirus Lament. Burn it, I said. Cyrus winked. Frame it. By the afternoon, I had perfected avoidance as an art form. If Cyrus walked into the room, I walked out. If he spoke, I responded with paperwork. If he looked at me, I looked anywhere else. Unfortunately, fate and the king despise peace. We were summoned to the throne room for a new mission. The Duke of Varro has grown restless. You two will negotiate peace, the king said. I froze. Varro. The king nodded. Yes, your former mentor, I believe. Perfect. Just perfect. The man who taught me everything about manipulation, now ruling a rebellious duchy. I could practically taste the irony. Cyrus glanced sideways. You had a mentor? I wasn't born omnipotent, I said dryly. Shame. It would explain your ego. We set out the next day. The journey was excruciating, mostly because Cyrus refused to stop talking. "So this Duke taught you strategy?" he asked, tossing a pebble into the road. "Yes. And now he's rebelling against the king?" "Yes. And we're supposed to convince him not to?" "Yes." Cyrus smirked. "You two sound close." I didn't dignify that with an answer. "Did he like you?" he pressed. "I don't engage in like." He leaned closer. "Did you ever admire him?" I sighed. "If you're attempting jealousy, it's both transparent and unnecessary." "Who said I was jealous?" "You're glaring at the word mentor, like it owes you money." He scoffed. "I'm not jealous, just curious." "Curious, of course," I repeated. He muttered, "Curious about why you only glare at me." I ignored that entirely. The Duke's estate loomed ahead, all cold marble and arrogance. His guards bowed us in. Inside, Duke Varro awaited, silver-haired and smiling the same sharp smile I once imitated. "Kale, I see you've traded domination for diplomacy," he greeted. "Temporarily public image," I replied. His eyes flicked to Cyrus. "And your companion?" "His name is Cyrus. He's difficult," I said. Cyrus grinned. Flattered. The Duke's smile widened. "So this is the infamous alchemist. The one you supposedly—" "Do not finish that sentence," I cut in. Cyrus raised an eyebrow. "What sentence?" "None," I said too quickly. Varro laughed softly. "You've gone soft, Kale. Once you'd have silenced me with a spell. Once I'd have respected you," I said. Cyrus leaned forward, voice low. "Should I leave you two to reminisce? Or are we fighting him soon?" I shot him a glare. "Behave." He smirked. "I am. Barely." Dinner was a battlefield. Varro made veiled jabs about my reformed image. Cyrus made louder jabs about how mentor sounded suspiciously intimate. When Varro mentioned my old ambitions. "Remember when you planned to overthrow the king, Kale? Such vision." Cyrus slammed his cup down hard enough to crack the table. "Wow, you two must have been really close," he said. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Cyrus." "What?" "I'm just admiring the mentorship." Varro smirked. "He's protective of you." "How sweet." Cyrus crossed his arms. "More like territorial." "Enough," I snapped. They both went silent. For 3 entire seconds. Then Cyrus muttered, "Didn't deny it." I considered setting myself on fire. Later, in the guest corridor, I cornered him. "What was that?" He shrugged. "He was flirting with you." "He was mocking me." "Same difference." "Are you truly this insufferable? Or is it a performance?" He stepped closer, voice dropping. "Maybe I don't like other men talking about you like they know you." I stared at him. "You're jealous." "Maybe, and maybe you like it," he said. "Ridiculous." "Then why are you smiling?" "I'm plotting," I lied. He tilted his head, studying me with that infuriating, knowing grin. "You always say that right before you do something you regret." I opened my mouth to respond, but he'd already leaned in, close enough that every thought in my head short-circuited again. He didn't kiss me this time. He just waited. "Say it that you want to," he murmured. "I want silence," I said. He laughed softly, breath warm against my skin. "Liar." I turned away before I could prove him right. "Go to bed, Cyrus." "Sweet dreams, Lord Kale." The next morning, Lyra sent a letter. Contained new lyrics. 2 hearts at war, yet drawn as one. The hero's mask, the villain's sun. They burn, they break, they never learn. And still, the world begins to turn. At the bottom, she'd scribbled, "Working title, Forbidden Affection." I crumpled it instantly. Cyrus peeked over my shoulder. "That's kind of romantic." I glared at him. "It's public humiliation in poetic form." He grinned. "You blushed." "I'm leaving," I said. "Where to?" "To rethink every life decision that led to this moment." "Want company?" "Absolutely not." He followed me anyway. Chapter 8: Diplomacy for Villains. Diplomacy, I've decided, is just manipulation without proper enthusiasm. Unfortunately, the king disagrees. He insisted Cyrus and I serve as ambassadors of goodwill in Duke Vero's court, which, translated from political nonsense, meant smile, lie, and don't start a coup. We arrived dressed like saints and felt like assassins. The Duke greeted us in his grand hall. Chandeliers, marble, and more arrogance than architecture. "Lord Kale, you return as a hero now. How quaint," he said, bowing slightly. I smiled with all my teeth. "Flattery won't disguise your treason, my lord," he chuckled. "Always the sharp tongue. Always the hypocrite," I murmured. Cyrus, beside me, elbowed lightly. "Be nice," he whispered. "I am. This is my nice tone." I whispered back. The Duke eyed Cyrus curiously. "So this is your famous companion?" "Unfortunately, yes," I said. Cyrus grinned. "You're welcome." That night, the Duke threw a banquet in our honor. A lavish attempt at diplomacy, which is to say, a stage for subtle threats. I sat through hours of empty compliments and terrible wine. The nobles hung on our every word, delighted by the kingdom's favorite heroes. I resisted the urge to set the tablecloth on fire. Cyrus, meanwhile, thrived. He was charming, laughing too loudly, smiling too brightly, drawing every pair of eyes to him. And, because fate hates me personally, he kept glancing my way mid-conversation, as if daring me to react. When the Duke's daughter leaned too close to him, laughing at something idiotic, Cyrus caught my eye and winked. It was deliberate. It was infuriating. So I retaliated. When the Duke offered me wine, I let my smile linger. My voice dipped just enough to sound like sin. "To the company," I said, gaze flicking to Cyrus. "Some of it is tolerable." Cyrus's grin faltered briefly before he raised his glass. "Flirting back, Lord Vareth? Careful. You'll start rumors." I sipped calmly. "They already exist. Might as well control the narrative." The table laughed. The Duke called it spirited chemistry. I called it war. Later, the banquet spilled into late-night corridors. Music drifted through the halls. I intended to retreat to my room until I discovered Cyrus had stolen it. He was sprawled across the bed, boots off, shirt half undone, looking entirely too pleased with himself. "You're in my room," I said. He looked up lazily. "They gave us one suite." Apparently, the Duke believes in team bonding. I inhaled through my teeth. "Of course he does." There was a long silence. He studied me like a puzzle he wanted to ruin. "You were jealous earlier," he said. "Incorrect. You glared at the Duke's daughter for breathing near me. I glared at her for speaking in metaphors." He smirked. "Sure." I turned away. "I'm not entertaining this conversation." "Then what are you entertaining, Kale?" He rose, slow and deliberate, closing the distance between us. "Because lately, you look at me like you want to kill me, or something worse. I assure you, both options remain on the table." I said, "Steady but not steady enough. Which one wins?" "Depends on the night." He smiled. "Infuriating, reckless, and far too close now. Tonight seems promising." I should have moved. I didn't. His hand brushed my collar. My pulse betrayed me instantly, so I did the only logical thing a man could do in that situation. I kissed him first. It was not gentle. It was war declared, worlds colliding. He kissed back with the same chaotic hunger, the kind that burns kingdoms. Then, somewhere between the sound of my heartbeat and his laugh against my mouth, the world decided to interrupt. The door burst open. Steel clanged. Assassins, cloaked, masked, efficient. Cyrus tore away from me, already reaching for his belt of explosives. "You attract the worst timing." "I attract everything except peace," I said, drawing my blade. They lunged. We moved. Perfect rhythm again. My wards flared. His gadgets exploded. Shadow met flame. At one point, he yelled, "Behind you!" and hurled a vial over my shoulder. It detonated in a burst of blinding light that incinerated two attackers and set the curtains on fire. Subtlety, I shouted. Improvised brilliance, he yelled back. Within minutes, the last assassin fell. Just as the Duke himself burst into the room, half-dressed, guards trailing. He took in the destruction. Bodies, smoke, burning drapes. What in the hells? Cyrus beamed. We just saved your life. I pinched the bridge of my nose. By accident. The Duke blinked. You fought off assassins in my chambers? Cyrus nodded proudly. Technically our chambers. Unbelievable, you're heroes. The Duke murmured. I stared at the ruined room. We're arsonists. He ignored me entirely. Tomorrow, I will announce an alliance with the crown. You've proven your loyalty. Cyrus elbowed me, grinning. See? We did diplomacy. I wanted to scream. Later, after the chaos had quieted and the servants finished putting out the fire, I stood by the window, watching the smoke fade into dawn. Cyrus leaned beside me. You okay? Define okay. He smiled faintly. You kissed me. You noticed. Any particular reason? Tactical advantage, I said automatically. Right? Because assassins always wait until after a kiss. Exactly. He laughed softly, then reached over to brush soot from my cheek. You're terrible at lying to yourself, Kale. Fortunately, I'm excellent at ignoring the truth, I said, stepping away. He just smiled, as if that wasn't the saddest thing I'd ever said. By morning, the Duke announced peace. The kingdom celebrated. The papers read, Ambassadors of Light. The legendary Chirus prevent yet another crisis. Light, saints, heroes. I read it twice, then threw the newspaper into the fire. Cyrus yawned behind me. You're doing that thing again. What thing? Pretending you don't like being the hero. I am pretending. Successfully. He grinned. If you say so, my lord. And damn him, I almost smiled. Chapter 9 Heroes by Default. I've learned two things about fame. First, it's loud. Second, it's profoundly undeserved. The kingdom threw another parade in our honor. For preventing an assassination and forging peace. Which sounds impressive until you realize we accidentally did both while arguing and setting curtains on fire. Cyrus waved from the carriage like he'd personally invented virtue. I sat beside him, calculating the structural integrity of the nearest bridge. They love us, he said, beaming at the crowds. I have committed so much paperwork fraud, and they're giving me medals. I muttered, maybe we're just that good at evil. Don't flatter yourself. He grinned. Flattering you, actually. I glared. You're insufferable. He winked. You like it. After the parade, we were paraded again, this time through the palace. The king bestowed another medal, which I accepted with the expression of a man enduring dentistry. Lord Kale, Master Cyrus, you've once again proven that redemption is possible for even the darkest souls. The king said, smiling like a man allergic to sincerity. Charming, I said. Cyrus bowed extravagantly. We live to serve. I snorted. We live to survive your experiments. The court laughed. I didn't. Lyra was there, scribbling in her notebook like a journalist possessed. She caught my eye and mouthed, Chirus rides again. I mouthed back, no. She wrote it down anyway. Later that evening, when the speeches ended and the applause finally died, Cyrus and I stood on the balcony overlooking the capital. The city glowed below. Torches, lanterns, banners fluttering with our names. Do you ever think that maybe we're actually doing good? Cyrus said quietly. Constantly. It's my nightmare of choice, I said. He laughed softly. You know what I mean. I do. And I reject it entirely. He leaned against the railing, wind tugging at his hair. Still. Feels not awful. I stared at him. That's dangerously close to optimism. Maybe it's contagious. I'm vaccinated. He chuckled, and for a moment, just a moment, the world felt quieter than usual. I hated how much I noticed that. Our next heroic mission came sooner than expected. A rogue band of mercenaries had taken over a border fort. The king naturally sent us, because apparently The only thing more entertaining than two former villains saving the world is seeing if we'll accidentally blow it up in the process. We arrived under cover of darkness. The plan was simple: infiltration, intimidation, negotiation. Cyrus immediately ignored that plan. The moment we approached the gate, he hurled one of his unstable grenades at it. The explosion flattened the entrance. I sighed. Subtlety is, as always, your greatest strength. Thank you, he said, genuinely proud. We stormed the fort. The mercenaries barely stood a chance. Somewhere between the smoke and swordplay, I realized we'd stopped coordinating by accident. We were simply in sync. He moved left, I countered right. He flung a potion, I shielded it. Every chaotic spark of his mind met the precision of mine in perfect, terrible harmony. And God's help me, it felt good. At one point, a mercenary nearly got the drop on him. I didn't think, I just moved. My blade intercepted the strike before it touched him. He blinked at me, breathless. You okay? I'm fine, you nearly died. Which would have been inconvenient. I said. Inconvenient? Yes. You owe me tea. He smiled faintly. Right? Just tea. We fought back to back for the rest of the night. When the battle ended, the fort was in ruins, but the hostages were unharmed. The villagers hailed us as heroes. Again, one woman actually wept on my shoulder. Thank you, you saved us, she said. I stood there, frozen, unsure what to do with the gratitude. Cyrus stepped in, resting a hand on my arm. He's not great with compliments, he told her. I'm allergic to sincerity, I said. She laughed through her tears. Then I'll just say, may the gods bless you both. Cyrus smiled. I pretended not to notice that it softened something in me I'd rather keep sharp. Back at camp that night, we sat by the fire. He handed me a cup of tea, perfectly brewed. For once. Not poisoned? I asked. Not this time. I took a sip. It was warm, calming, unacceptable. He watched me. You didn't have to save me today. Yes, I did. Why? Because your death would generate too much paperwork. He grinned. You care. I care about efficiency. Liar. I stared into the fire, choosing silence over admission. He shifted closer, shoulder brushing mine. The world around us glowed in gold and smoke. For the first time, it didn't feel like a battlefield. Just something else. Something I didn't have words for. Kale, he said softly. Yes. Nothing. Just thanks. I sighed. You're welcome. Against my better judgment. He laughed quietly, and the sound hit me harder than it should have. The next morning, the royal messenger arrived with fresh headlines. Chirus liberates border fort. The empire's darkest sons bring hope to the people. I crumpled the paper. They're insufferable. Cyrus looked over my shoulder, grinning. They're right, though. About what? That we're good at this. At accidentally doing good? Yes. It's a curse. He leaned in, eyes bright with something that was neither villainy nor heroism. Then maybe we're cursed together. I should have replied with something scathing. Instead, I just said, perhaps. Later, when he wasn't looking, I found myself checking the perimeter, twice, to make sure nothing could get near him. Habit, I told myself. Pure, strategic habit. Nothing more. Probably. Chapter 10, The Dark God Returns. Unfortunately, the thing about destroying ancient evil is that it never stays gone. You can blast it, banish it, or accidentally vaporize it while arguing with your rival, and somehow it still finds a way to crawl back. Like mold or Cyrus in the morning. The king summoned us to the throne room at dawn. I hate dawn. It's when optimism wakes up. Lord Kale, Master Cyrus, the creature you defeated months ago appears to be reforming. The king began, voice solemn. I stared at him. Wonderful. I can't even fail properly. Cyrus smirked beside me. Hey, maybe it just missed us. Yes, because eldritch horrors are known for their emotional attachments. I said, deadpan. The royal advisor unrolled a map across the table. Our diviners have located its presence in the old catacombs beneath the capital. We need our greatest heroes to stop it. I waited for the punchline. It didn't come. Heroes? Are you certain you've addressed the right villains? I repeated. The king smiled that politicians smile, the kind that thinks sincerity can solve structural incompetence. The people trust you now. Hope follows your names. Cyrus elbowed me. Hear that? We're icons. I prefer criminal masterminds, I muttered. Less paperwork. The king clapped his hands. You'll leave at once. Discreetly, of course. No entourage. I blinked. You're sending just us? Of course. Who better to defeat evil than those who once embodied it? He said. Cyrus grinned. I like this logic. I did not. We set off that evening, alone for once. The road stretched ahead, endless and irritatingly picturesque. Cyrus whistled as he walked, every note a personal attack. Must you? I asked. Yes, silence makes me think, he said cheerfully. Tragic. You'd miss me if I were quiet. I'd throw a national holiday. He laughed, and the sound, infuriatingly, made the woods feel less empty. By nightfall, we reached an abandoned watchtower. We built camp inside, because apparently heroes aren't allowed to requisition proper lodging. Cyrus handled the fire, which I assumed meant imminent disaster. Don't worry, it's under control, he said as sparks caught. Your last fire was also under control. It consumed half a warehouse. Details. The flames finally settled into a steady glow. I sat across from him, trying not to notice how the light caught on his face. Sharp angles, soft shadows, eyes reflecting gold. Stop staring, he said suddenly. I wasn't. You were. I was assessing threat vectors. He grinned. You mean my jawline? I threw a pebble at him. It missed. He laughed anyway. After dinner, such as it was, consisting of slightly burnt rations and wounded pride, we reviewed the plan. The catacombs run under the royal quarter. We'll enter through the old aqueduct tunnels, I said, tracing the map. Cyrus nodded, chin propped on his hand. You ever think about how weird it is that we're good at this now? At what? Saving people. Constantly, it haunts me, I said. He chuckled. You sound almost disappointed. I am. Villainy used to have standards. Now it's all public approval and applause. He leaned back. You could just enjoy it. I don't enjoy hypocrisy. You do enjoy winning. I didn't answer, mostly because he wasn't wrong. Later, when the fire burned low, we fell into that quiet space between banter and confession. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. You ever think what we'd be doing if all this hadn't happened? He said softly. Conquering something, I said. Together. I hesitated. Probably against each other. And then, inevitably, together. Because you'd ruin my plans and I'd fix your explosions. He smiled faintly. You make it sound domestic. Please don't. Admit it, you'd miss me. I'd replace you with a quieter alchemist. He rolled onto his side, watching me. You'd be bored within a day. 2. I corrected. Silence again. Crackling fire. His gaze lingered longer than it should have. Kale, he said finally, voice lower. Yes. Thanks. For coming with me. I was ordered. You didn't have to agree so fast. I turned away before my face could betray treachery. I needed a vacation from the court. From me too. Yes. Liar. He wasn't wrong, and I hated that. The next morning, we descended into the catacombs. The air was damp, thick with the scent of old stone and older secrets. Our lanterns threw long, twitching shadows along the walls. It's feeding on fear, I said quietly, scanning the carvings. The more people panic, the stronger it gets. Cyrus frowned. So basically, the entire kingdom's been doom-scrolling. Precisely. As we moved deeper, the air pulsed, an echo of something vast awakening. My instincts screamed danger. His did too, judging by the sudden seriousness on his face. Stay behind me, I said. He snorted. Cute. No. Cyrus. But he'd already stepped forward, light flickering against the black stone ahead. The wall shivered. A shape moved. Then silence. Just the two of us standing there, pretending not to be terrified. We set up a temporary barrier before retreating to the surface. Night had fallen again by the time we reached the camp. I collapsed by the fire, exhausted. Cyrus sat beside me, closer than necessary. "You were worried," he said softly. "I was annoyed. You yelled my name. I yell at everyone. It's part of my charm. Right? Keep telling yourself that." He smiled, slow and knowing. The firelight flickered between us again. I should have moved. I didn't. For once, the silence wasn't uncomfortable. I just stared at the flames, pretending to calculate probabilities instead of wondering what it would mean to stop pretending at all. Chapter 11: Confessions in the Firelight. The thing about silence is that it's never actually silent. When you've spent most of your life orchestrating chaos, commanding armies, or threatening underlings, quiet feels like mockery. Like the world has gone suspiciously calm right before it collapses again. That's what the fire sounded like that night. Too loud in the quiet. Cyrus sat across from me, cross-legged, chin tilted toward the flames. He looked uncharacteristically thoughtful, which meant disaster was imminent. "Kale," he said finally, "don't start, it's late. I'm trying to enjoy this rare moment of peace before something explodes. I'm not going to blow anything up." "That's what you said before the teapot incident." He smirked faintly. "That was an experiment. That was arson." He laughed under his breath, then grew quiet again. The silence stretched, filled with the crackle of fire and the occasional hoot of an owl that should have known better. When he finally spoke again, his voice was low. "I never hated you, you know." I blinked. "Congratulations. Shall I alert the historians?" He ignored that. "When we first fought, I thought maybe I did. You were arrogant, calculating, always 2 steps ahead. It drove me insane. Your emotional control is what I admire most about you," I said dryly. "I'm serious, Kale. I know. That's why I'm uncomfortable." He threw a twig at me, scowling. "I'm saying I didn't hate you. I wanted to beat you, match you, maybe understand you." "You wanted to understand me?" He shrugged. "You were the only person who ever made me feel like losing was interesting." I stared at him, the words lodging somewhere inconveniently close to my chest. "That's the most deranged compliment I've ever received." "Thanks," he said, smiling faintly. For a while, neither of us spoke. The fire danced between us, casting gold over his face and shadow over mine. It would have been easy to say something cruel to hide behind mockery. That's what I usually did. But instead, I found myself saying, "I never hated you either." He looked up, surprised. I was irritated, infuriated, occasionally homicidal, but never hateful. I continued because honesty makes me break out in hives. His mouth curved. "That's practically affection. Coming from you. Don't make me regret it." "Too late." I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "You were chaos personified. You made everything unpredictable. Plans, meetings, tea kettles. I made you think," he said. "Don't flatter yourself. Come on, admit it. You liked having someone who didn't play by your rules." I hesitated. The truth hovered dangerously close to the surface. He leaned forward. "You what?" I snapped my attention back to the fire. "I think you're an intolerable distraction." He grinned. "You're blushing. I'm overheating from your incompetently built fire." "Sure." For a long moment he just watched me. The weight of his gaze was unbearable, like he was dissecting every defense I'd ever built and finding the soft parts underneath. Then softly, "You don't have to pretend all the time, you know." "I'm not pretending." "Yes, you are. You act like you're made of marble. But you're just a man who reads romance novels at midnight and pretends they're strategy manuals." My throat closed. "You're insufferable. And you're terrified of being seen." "That's enough," I said, sharper than I meant. But he didn't flinch. He leaned closer instead, eyes burning in the firelight. "Then stop hiding." Before I could come up with a properly devastating retort, he kissed me. It wasn't like the other times, the accidental, performative, infuriating ones. This one was quiet, real. His hand found the back of my neck, gentle but certain. The firelight flickered between us, shadows swallowing the world until there was nothing but warmth and the sound of our uneven breathing. For one horrifying moment, I kissed him back. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I'd planned wars, coups, rebellions. But this was chaos, uncontainable and inconvenient and terrifyingly human. When he finally pulled back, his voice was barely a whisper. See? Not so scary. I stared at him, every rational thought short-circuiting. You just kissed your mortal enemy. He smiled. Guess I have bad taste. You have no taste. He laughed softly. You kissed me back. Debatable. Observable fact. I glared at him, which only made him grin wider. If you tell anyone, I'll write a ballad about it, he teased. I was going to commit homicide. Romantic homicide, apparently. We sat in silence again after that, the air heavy with everything unsaid. The fire burned low, dwindling to embers. He eventually fell asleep near the flames, coat draped around his shoulders, face relaxed for once. I stayed awake, staring into the dark. Should have felt wrong, this peace. But it didn't. Felt inevitable, which was worse. I looked at him once more. You're a disaster, I whispered. He murmured something in his sleep. My name, I think. I closed my eyes. Of course you are. Morning came, brutal and bright. When he woke, he stretched like a cat and smiled at me. So, about last night. Never happened, I interrupted. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, it happened. Delusion is a known side effect of lack of sleep. He snorted. Fine. I'll let you pretend. Excellent. But when he stood and brushed past me, our hands brushed, just barely, and something traitorous in me sparked again. I ignored it. I always do. Chapter 12 Heroics, but make it evil. I've made many plans in my life. Most of them worked. The rest involved Cyrus. This one was supposed to be flawless. Stage a fake coup, lure the dark god's core out of hiding, destroy it before the kingdom noticed. Simple, efficient, dastardly in concept, heroic in effect. Naturally, everything went wrong the moment we started succeeding. It began at midnight, beneath the capital's glittering skyline. We stood on the rooftop of the old citadel, cloaked in shadows and poor decisions. Cyrus adjusted his gloves, grin sharp enough to warrant a safety warning. You sure this is a good idea? No, that's how I know it's ours, I said. He laughed, the kind that sounded like trouble. You missed doing this, didn't you? I miss competence. It died when you arrived, I said. Harsh, accurate. Our fake coup relied on 3 key elements: illusion spells, sabotage of the palace defenses, and a perfectly timed speech to convince everyone we were staging an uprising. Normal Thursday activities. Cyrus was in charge of theatrics. I handled strategy. Together, we were a disaster waiting for applause. By dawn, rumors of our rebellion had spread faster than royal gossip. Banners with our sigil, why did we even have a joint sigil, appeared in the streets. Peasants cheered. Soldiers panicked. Cyrus stood beside me on the palace balcony, surveying the chaos below. They love us, he said, amazed. They fear us as they should. I corrected. A messenger sprinted past, screaming, The heroes have turned. Cyrus grinned. We're trending. I rubbed my temples. For once, we're succeeding at villainy by doing good. Then the sky broke open. A rift tore through the clouds, black and shimmering. The air turned heavy, like breathing through grief. From it, a voice, low, ancient, and profoundly unimpressed, rumbled. You dare disturb me again? Cyrus looked at me. That's a yes. Wonderful, we've angered God. Again, I said. The rift widened. Shadows poured out like liquid smoke, coalescing into a monstrous form. Jagged wings, burning eyes, teeth the size of small regrets. Cyrus, kindly stop smiling, I said, drawing my blade. Can't help it. I've always wanted to fight a god, he said, cracking a vial of glowing blue liquid. Therapy exists. Where's the fun in that? The creature roared, shaking the city. Glass shattered across rooftops. The crowd below scattered, screaming, except for the handful of bards already composing ballads. Cyrus hurled his potion. It exploded in a burst of light, briefly illuminating the thing's core. A pulsing heart of shadow. "There!" I shouted. "I see it." He charged ahead. I followed, because apparently self-preservation is a hobby I abandoned. We moved in sync the way we always did when chaos took over. His explosions forced the beast back. My wards redirected the debris. Every motion fit the other's, strategy and madness entwined. "Left flank," he called. "Already handled. You're bossy when you're impressed." "I'm never impressed." "You're lying again." He grinned mid-spin, hair catching firelight. I wanted to strangle him, or kiss him, possibly both. The battle raged across the rooftops. At one point, Cyrus leapt from a collapsing tower, landing beside me in a crouch. "Miss me?" he panted. "I was calculating your probability of survival. It was disappointingly high." "You worry too much, Kale. And you think too little." He smirked. "That's why we work." I parried a strike from the creature's wing, sparks raining down around us. "Don't make me agree with you mid-combat." Too late. We struck together, my blade slicing through the shadow veins as Cyrus detonated his last charge. The explosion hit like thunder, swallowing the core in a blinding flare of light. When the smoke cleared, the creature was gone. The sky finally was still. For a moment, neither of us moved. The city below erupted in cheers. Cyrus leaned on his knees, grinning like he'd just stolen victory from fate. "Did we just save the capital?" "Unfortunately, yes." He laughed breathlessly. "You're welcome. I wasn't thanking you." "Sure sounded like it." "You're delusional." He stepped closer, brushing soot from my collar. "You've got ash in your hair, Lord Vareth." I caught his wrist before he could linger. "You're enjoying this far too much. I like seeing you rattled." "I'm not rattled." "Then why are you still holding my hand?" I looked down. Damn it, he was right. I dropped it immediately. Tactical reflex. Of course. The king arrived soon after, surrounded by guards and hysteria. "My heroes, you've saved us again," he declared. "Accidentally," I muttered. Cyrus elbowed me. "Smile for the propaganda." "I'd rather perish." "Later. We've got an audience." Lyra appeared from somewhere. Of course she did, scribbling in her notebook like a gremlin possessed. "Chirus, the coup of compassion," she said aloud. "Perfect title." "I hate it already," I said. She ignored me. "That kiss during the battle. Symbolic, passionate." "We did not kiss," I snapped. Cyrus raised an eyebrow. "Not yet." I turned to him, incredulous. "You're incorrigible." He winked. "You love it." By evening, the chaos had calmed. The city was safe, the gods' core sealed, and the people once again chanting our names. We found ourselves back on that same cursed balcony, watching torches flicker in the streets below. Cyrus leaned on the railing. "So, fake coup. Worked out." "Yes, in that it was a complete, world-shaking success that I now profoundly regret," I said. He smiled sideways at me. "You say that like it isn't the best night of your life." "I've had better." "Name one." I couldn't, because somehow, despite the smoke, the chaos, and the relentless adoration of fools, I was standing next to him, alive, victorious, and perilously close to admitting that I didn't hate it. When he finally turned toward me, grin softening into something quieter, the world seemed to pause. "Kale," he said. "Yes. Next time we pretend to be villains." "There won't be a next time. Remind me to bring more fireworks." "Cyrus." He laughed, bright and unbothered, walking past me into the light. "Admit it, you loved the show." I exhaled slowly, watching him go. "You're chaos incarnate. And you're still watching," he called back. Damn him. He was right again. Chapter 13, you idiot. Don't die before the epilogue. The thing about Cyrus is that he never shuts up until the moment you need him to speak. And right now, he wasn't saying a damn thing. The blast had thrown us halfway across the plaza, straight through a collapsed archway. Smoke stung my throat, fire licked at the ruins, and the air reeked of ash and victory. The dark god's essence was gone, obliterated, finally. But so was Cyrus's ability to stand upright. I stumbled to him, coughing, shoving broken stones aside. Cyrus! Nothing, just a groan. His body was half buried under debris, his coat torn, blood streaking down his temple. Of course you'd make saving my life look like a tragic romance novel. I muttered, dropping to my knees. He blinked sluggishly. Did it look cool, though? Shut up, I snapped, even as I brushed dirt from his face. I'll take that as a yes. I hauled a slab of rubble off his leg and nearly tore something in my shoulder. He winced but tried to smirk. Careful, Kale. You'll ruin your manicure. Cyrus, if you die before I finish insulting you, I will resurrect you myself and kill you again. Sounds romantic, he rasped. Nothing about this is romantic. Except, apparently, everything. He'd pushed me out of the way. I'd seen it. One reckless lunge, one flash of blue light, and then the explosion had swallowed him instead of me. A stupid, gallant, idiotic act. The kind only heroes did. I hated him for it. I adored him for it. And now he was bleeding out on my lap because of course he was. Hey, did we win? He said weakly, voice shaking between breaths. Yes, congratulations. You've saved the kingdom again. Do you feel proud of yourself? He smiled faintly. A little. Good. Hold on to that. It'll make your funeral speech easier. Kale. What? You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic? You just nearly died for me. You lunatic. I snapped, voice rising until it cracked. He blinked at me, stunned. Wow, you sound worried. I'm furious you don't get to die. Not before I'm done yelling at you, I said, but my throat tightened, betraying me. He laughed softly, wincing. Noted. I tore open what was left of my sleeve and pressed it against his wound. My hands shook. I told myself it was adrenaline. It wasn't. Cyrus reached up, clumsily catching my wrist. You care too much, you know that? I care about efficiency. You're inconvenient to replace. Sure, that's all it is. He murmured, eyes half-lidded. I swallowed hard, pulse hammering. Cyrus. He looked up at me with that same damned grin, even as his blood soaked through my fingers. Say it. Say what? That you'd miss me. I'd miss the quiet, I said. Liar. He was fading, his smirk softening into something fragile, real. That look, the one that made my heart forget what villainy was supposed to feel like. I leaned closer, voice shaking. You idiot. Don't you dare die before the epilogue. Do you hear me? Depends, do we get one? He whispered. Not if you keep bleeding on me, we don't. I pressed my forehead to his, breath shallow. I told you from the start, heroics don't suit us. He gave a weak chuckle. You wear it better than you think. Cyrus. Kale, he interrupted, eyes closing for a second. You say it. Say what? That you love me. The words hit harder than any explosion. I stared at him, at the smirk fighting its way back onto his face even as pain twisted it. Typical. Even half dead, he was infuriating. Cyrus, you are the most reckless, insufferable, aggravating person I've ever met. I said, voice low. Aha. And I hate that God's help me. I love you. The words tangled in my throat. His eyes flickered open. A smile, faint but certain, curved his mouth. Knew it. You? I started. But he surged up, catching my collar with surprising strength, and pulled me down into a kiss. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't soft. It was blood and smoke and everything unsaid between us crashing together in one furious, desperate moment. The world blurred, the firelight, the screams, the ringing in my ears. There was only him. When he finally pulled back, breathing hard, his voice was rough but smug. So you do like me? Unfortunately, yes. Tragic. Shut up. He laughed again, weak but alive, and it sounded like victory. By the time the healers arrived, I'd composed myself enough to look bored again. I barked orders, insulted the medics, and refused to let anyone touch him without my supervision. Cyrus watched me through half-lidded eyes as they carried him onto a stretcher. You're really bad at pretending you don't care. I'm excellent at it, you're just too stubborn to die on cue, I said. He grinned, even as they lifted him away. You love that about me. I exhaled slowly, letting the ruins of the city glow around us like the end of the world, and muttered under my breath. Unfortunately, yes. Chapter 14. The world applauds again. You'd think killing a god once would be enough. Apparently not. Apparently, when you accidentally vaporize one divine abomination, another grows back. Stronger, louder, and with worse timing. This one chose to resurrect itself in the middle of the capital, right beneath the palace, during a public celebration. How considerate. I suppose, in a way, it was poetic justice. The kingdom had built statues of us. I'd warned them that hero worship invited cosmic punishment. They thought I was being humble. Idiots. Now half the city was on fire again, and Cyrus was laughing. Admit it. You missed the chaos, he shouted over the roar, his hair wild with static, coat half burned. I missed silence, and peace, and tea, preferably in that order. I yelled back, slicing through a tendril of smoke with my blade. Cyrus grinned like he'd just been complimented. We'll have tea after we save the world, again. Stop saying that. It makes it sound intentional. I hissed. He winked. Maybe it is. I hated how good we looked together in battle. The synchronization was infuriating. Every parry, every blast, every sarcastic quip lined up perfectly. It was like the universe itself was shipping us. Left flank, he shouted. I see it. I snapped, hurling a bolt of dark energy that shattered a column and rained molten stone onto the god's shadowy core. The crowd, because of course there was a crowd, started cheering. Nothing quite ruins the mood of divine annihilation like applause. By the time the thing finally disintegrated, again you're welcome. The sky had turned gold and the capital looked like a moderately artistic ruin. Cyrus stood beside me, panting, glowing with triumph and blood and unbearable charisma. The cheering intensified. Someone was crying. Someone else was waving a banner that said Chirus forever. I considered spontaneous combustion. A herald approached, trembling with joy. My lords, the kingdom owes you its life once more. Keep it. It's never done me any good. Cyrus elbowed me. They want you to give a speech. I would rather be devoured by the residual ashes of the god we just killed. Too late. The crowd was chanting my name now, and unfortunately, I did have a flair for the dramatic. So I climbed onto the nearest piece of debris that vaguely resembled a stage, lifted my half-destroyed cape, and gave the performance of my life. Citizens of the capital, I stand before you today as proof that divine incompetence is eternal. Yes, the dark god has been vanquished again, through the combined efforts of your favorite accidental saviors. And while we are, of course, deeply flattered by your incessant cheering, I would like to remind you that heroism was never the goal. Cyrus muttered behind me. That's one way to say you're welcome. I ignored him. If anything, this victory is a tragic demonstration of the kingdom's failure to maintain a functioning moral compass. You've relied on two former villains, one of whom can't make tea without explosions, to save you twice. This is not a joke. You are applauding negligence. And yet, we accept your gratitude because apparently that's what heroes do. You're welcome. I despise it here. The applause was deafening. And then, because the universe hates me. Cyrus stepped forward, eyes gleaming, and before I could stop him, he grabbed me by the waist and dipped me backward. The crowd gasped. I froze. Cyrus, don't you dare. I hissed, low and dangerous. Too late, the fans demanded it. He whispered. And then he kissed me, in front of thousands of people. Fireworks, literal and metaphorical, exploded overhead. The cheers hit a pitch that probably caused permanent ear damage. I was 90% certain I blacked out for a moment, Not from passion, mind you, but from sheer mortification. When he finally let me up, I was still half leaning against him, cape askew, expression frozen somewhere between fury and disbelief. You have just weaponized affection. He grinned, unrepentant. Public relations. I'm going to commit arson. Too late. We already did that. The king arrived shortly afterward, surrounded by his usual entourage of sycophants and confusion. My brave champions, he declared. You've done it again. The kingdom will sing of your deeds for centuries. Please don't, it encourages them. Chapter 15. Happily ever after, against my will. The king tried to knight me again today. I refused, of course. There are limits to my tolerance for humiliation, and one of them involves being touched on the shoulder with a ceremonial spoon, while an audience chants, "Long live the savior of the realm." I'm not a savior. I'm barely civil before breakfast. Cyrus, however, looked delighted. Come on, he whispered, elbowing me. Just let him knight you. It'll make a great painting. I'd rather be imprisoned. Fine, I'll share the cell, he said. I glared at him. He smiled like he'd won something. When the official ceremony ended, we were offered, because apparently irony has no end, permanent heroic titles. Lord Cale Vareth, Defender of the Realm. I nearly bit through my own tongue. Do I look like a defender of anything? I asked the royal council. Technically, my lord, you've defended the realm twice, said one unfortunate clerk. By accident, that's not heroism. That's poor cosmic oversight. I corrected. Cyrus raised his hand. I'm fine with mine as long as it comes with free lodging. Your title is Master Inventor of Peace. The king said. Cyrus grinned. Oh, that's awful. I love it. I walked out before I could commit regicide. We retired soon after, or as Cyrus put it, strategically withdrew before the PR tour starts. Our new residence was a remote manor at the edge of nowhere. Ivy-choked, drafty, and gloriously ungoverned. To the public, we retired to a life of quiet reflection. In reality, we planned villainy. Or at least that was the excuse. Cyrus filled the cellar with half-finished inventions that either hummed ominously or brewed excellent tea. I filled the study with blueprints for hypothetical world domination, annotated with notes like, too ethical, or requires less paperwork. We called it research. Mostly, we argued. This curtain is a crime against aesthetics. I said one afternoon. It's just a curtain, Cyrus replied, upside down on the couch for reasons unknown. It's floral. So, evil people don't hang floral curtains. He glanced at me, grinning. You're not evil anymore. I froze. Excuse me? Face it. You've gone soft. You make tea now. I made arsenic-laced tea once. Keyword, once. I scowled, pacing. You know, I could still conquer the kingdom if I wanted to. Sure, after lunch. I despise you. Liar. Some days, he'd sneak up behind me in the library, kiss my neck, and say something insufferable like, thinking about me again? To which I'd reply, no, about your funeral. He'd grin. I'd roll my eyes, and somehow the day would pass peacefully. We'd sit by the fire at night, drinking tea and pretending we weren't hopelessly content. Cyrus would scribble notes for inventions that would revolutionize villain logistics, and I'd pretend to be unimpressed, even as I leaned a little closer to see what he was drawing. Every time he caught me watching, he'd smirk. Admit it, you like me domestic. Domestic implies you're tame. You're one explosion away from excommunication. One evening, during yet another argument about curtain color, I maintain crimson is dignified. He claims it's too murdery. He abruptly crossed the room and kissed me. It was mid-sentence. I'd been saying something perfectly reasonable about thematic interior design when he decided to interrupt with lips and heat and absolutely no respect for personal boundaries. I stumbled back against the desk. Cyrus, he smirked. You talk too much. I was winning that argument. You always think that. Because I always do. He kissed me again. Longer this time. Infuriatingly effective. When he finally pulled back, I exhaled slowly. You're insufferable. He grinned, eyes glinting. And you're in love with me. I sighed, defeated. Tragically, he laughed. The kind of laugh that made the air feel less like confinement and more like home. Outside, the world kept spinning. People rebuilding, bards singing, the kingdom still writing love songs about the villains who saved them. Lyra sent us a copy of her new ballad last week. The Devil's Devotion, 37 verses long. I burned it immediately. Cyrus memorized half before the flames reached the chorus. Now he sings it under his breath whenever I'm trying to read. I should hate it, but sometimes when the firelight hits him just right, when his laughter fills the space between my sighs, I think maybe, just maybe, the world got one thing right. Kale, he murmured tonight, half asleep, head on my shoulder. You ever think we're the good guys now? I looked down at him, the chaos, the light, the infuriating heart of my undoing, and said, no, we're just villains with better PR. He smiled, kissed me once more, and whispered, still sounds like love to me. I rolled my eyes, pulled him closer anyway, and muttered against his hair. Tragically, the fire crackled. The world was quiet, and for the first time in a very long time, so was I.